Welcome to the Training Stimulus podcast. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Mr. Paul Standell, who I've known for a long time since we worked together in Gymbox back in 2017, and it's been great following his journey since then. We cover in this episode the Bali fitness bubble and Paul's thoughts and experience with it. We talk about how he manages a ridiculous number of online clients and how he plans to retire early on account of it, with some surprising and very helpful perspectives on how he believes online coaching should be done, as well as sharing his experience of biomechanics and cadaver stories. I got a ton out of this episode. I think he has some refreshing takes on the fitness industry, and I took away a ton of value. Hopefully you will too. So without further ado, let's get into it.
How you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. You?
Very well, thank you. Tell me where you're up to in your Bali trip.
We've been here for a couple of months. We leave actually in a week's time. So navigating Bali with a 5-month-old, 3 months when he got here, has been eventful. It is. My brother came out for a couple of weeks and he described it as polite chaos. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a pretty good description of Bali. I can definitely see why people move here, especially at certain parts or points in their life. Yeah. Like if we didn't have a kid and I was maybe a few years younger, I could easily see myself doing a few years. Yeah. I don't know that I'd move permanently, and definitely not with a baby. But it's been a cool trip.
I feel you. And which parts of Bali did you go to, and what were the contrasts between each area?
So we started in Sanur. We did best part of a month in Sanur, and that's definitely the most family friendly. I don't need to tell you, you live there. Yeah. It's just how I bumped into you. But that's the most family friendly. There's like a 7-kilometer beach path. You can actually push a stroller on it and yada, yada, yada. So I actually think that's probably our favorite. I think probably.
Good answer.
Certainly would be my partner's answer on it. Yeah. Then we literally did Ubud for like 4 days, but not really, because we just went to the Four Seasons in Ubud, which is not really part of Central Ubud. So I can't. Four Seasons is bloody lovely, but I have no idea what the rest of Ubud's like. I'm told it's a bit chaotic as well now. Yeah. Then we went over to Pereranan. So we did a month in Pereranan. I actually liked Pereranan quite a lot. Yeah. I thought it was a nice mix of still close enough to the chaos of Canggu, but still kind of quiet enough and a little out of the way. So there were great food options. You could order plenty of stuff, but you didn't feel like you were just hemmed in by chaos on all sides. So that was pretty nice. Liked that one. And then now we're in Uluwatu for the last part of it, which is where we're recording this. And it's visually cool, right? Like the cliffs are great. You're up and like to get between anything is you're dropping into some kind of chasm and then coming back up again. Yeah. But it is also, as a result, a bit more spread out, not so well connected. Definitely feels chaosy, doesn't have as many good food options. It's not as easy to get hold of stuff. So the apartment we've got here is super nice. So shout out to Body Factory Lifestyle Residents. So I can't fault that. That's been great. But yeah, the rest of it, I don't know. I think is probably my least favorite of the ones. It would be my general take. That's probably been the thing.
Yeah, very fair. I think that's a very fair assessment. And the other thing we were talking about just before recording was the fitness culture. Yeah. So I'm curious, because you were in the UK just before this, were you? Yeah. Comparing, well, we met at Gymbox in Farringdon, which is one of the biggest gyms, I think, in Europe by square footage.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's enormous. So that was a bit of a hotbed for getting a good view of different fitness niches, I'd say. Get a nice overview of all different types of training. And you've obviously spent a lot of time in a lot of different gyms. What has been your impression of the fitness culture in Bali?
It's definitely more showy, if I'm being nice. It's influencery, it's Love Islandy in places, it's that kind of thing. And it still varies via place, right? So we were talking before about Bamboo, which is in Uluwatu, and it's right around the corner from where I am. And it's the craziest gym I think I've ever been in terms of, I mean, it must make a killing because from 6 a.m. to seemingly 10 at night, it has a class going with at least 50 to 100 people, if not more, on some of them. I think he said maybe up to 200 in some of the peak ones, which is like it's phenomenally busy. So they must be printing cash. But everyone is shirtless. There's tripods everywhere. Everyone is half checking each other out. There's a lot of very attractive people. There's a lot of silicon. I think I joked. I wasn't sure what weighed more in that gym, the dumbbells or the silicon. So you find yourself partially judging people who are in there being like, I don't want to ever be this shameless, while also half looking at them. And it's like,
That's fascinating.
it's like being 23 and back in a club again, where part of you is like, I'm not really a clubbing guy, but I really hope that hot girl looks at me, right? Like there's an element of that's going on in that gym that is, it is just, if Love Island had a gym, it is Bamboo.
Yeah.
It is a shameless place. I don't mean that positively, but it's an interesting experience. If you're in Bali and around Uluwatu, you should go at least once just to see it, really. It's like an experience. The other gyms, they have a little bit of that. There are tripods, there are shirtless people, but yeah, to my experience, nothing too crazy. It's kind of like, yeah, okay. I remember when I worked at a David Lloyd back in the UK, I was there for 6 years. One dude who must have been about 1920, I remember walking past him, he was squatting on the squat rack and singing, "This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot. This is why." And I was like, I couldn't hate you more. What are you doing? Right? There would be dudes occasionally whipping shirts off on the gym floor there. And so like, that's not a new thing. And you'd find that even in the UK. And especially if you went to like a CrossFit gym or that type of thing, people would be shirtless. But it's a different type of shirtless-y kind of thing. But the gyms themselves are generally pretty nice. The food's great. The recovery for facilities, so sauna, ice bath, plunge pools, whatever, like they're all great. I will miss those for sure. So the scene has some really big pros. That it is clearly a fitness culture that is a really big part of the whole touristy side of Bali. Like seemingly less so maybe in Uluwatu other than Bamboo there, but like every other shop is a protein-based shop. Like when you go on their equivalent of Deliveroo, Grab or Gojek kind of thing, and you search, you just filter it by protein. Everything has the calories and the macros on. It's great for that side of things. So all in all, I quite like the fitness side of Bali generally. It just has some extremes, but that's true even of, I think, anywhere you go.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to pull out, was the extremes. In that I feel like in many areas of life nowadays, things just get taken to the extreme very, very quickly, and influencer culture accelerates that. So whenever something gets known for something, that area or that aspect of life someone says, okay, a fancy gym does well, let's make an even fancier gym, let's make it even more tropical vibes, and they just take it to the absolute nth degree, and you get these weird microcosms of life.
I think you even find that like in I always think of that with steroid use through the years. And so I'm 38, and steroids have always been a part of gym life and gym culture. But when I was growing up and kind of coming through it, the guys who did gear basically lived in dungeons, and their only vice was steroid use. They lived on chicken, rice, and broccoli, lifted heavy weights, channeled their inner Dorian Yates, and that was about it. You didn't really see them too much. Now I see a whole culture of like 18, 19-year-olds, juiced to the gills, like popping pills on the weekends, getting hammered. Like, we just see a bunch of extremes. You go, this is too many vices in one go. But I think that's fueled by the fact that, look, we are drawn to extremes. We want to see the fastest, the fittest, the strongest, the biggest. And so we reinforce that as a consumer. We follow CBum. We don't follow the normal kind of dude. And you see much more of that with phones than, when we were growing up and you had to go on T Nation to find your info to begin with and what have you, or the magazine era before that. Like, you get exposed to it, but it wasn't so constant. So it wasn't really, I remember being in my early teens or whatever and getting some small dumbbells that, the pink blue ones with sand in that maybe went to a few kilos or whatever that were in my parents' garage. And like, you're aware Arnie exists. So you're just doing a million curls and stuff, hoping you get big. So like, there's an awareness of it, but I can only imagine what it's like to grow up in it now. I think there would be a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a lifetime natty. Yeah. Right. But you get to a certain point in your life where you're like, well, there's not much point in me doing it now, right? Kind of thing. Maybe a TRT thing eventually, although I think lots of people are pretending they're doing TRT. I'm like, you're just taking trench up, right? So it would be quite different. So I think those extremes, whether it's this Bali kind of culture with it, because there's still steroid use here,
Yeah.
There's a lot of shirtless people riding around on mopeds. There's silicone. There's people just trying to look their absolute best and peacocking around. And I'm confident that if I grew up in this era, I'd be way more impacted by that, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but I also don't know what you do about it. I mean, I don't know what you think on that.
No, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. I think the other component to it is the accessibility of information, like you alluded to. Just if you're a teenager growing up and you're interested in getting massive, then you can find that stuff.
And people are much more open about it, right?
Yeah.
Which on one level is positive, I think, because if you think The Rock got to his size, right? I know he hasn't admitted it, but, So on one level, I like openness, but I suppose the downside to the openness is it does encourage it. It does go, well, yeah, you just take these. And that is a problem because, I've known too many people who, they start on something reasonable and they're supposed to have these few months off. And then they get smaller and softer and don't like that. So the few months they were going to take off becomes 4 weeks. And then the cycle gets a bit bigger. The stack gets a bit larger. And I think we will see gradually more deaths and more problems as a result, just because of the quantities of people doing it and the fact that 20-year-olds, and I include myself happily in this category, are not renowned for being the smartest of people or thinking long-term. No 20-year-old is motivated by the idea of health. That's not a thing. Like, you get old enough, you start, as I approach 40, I notice myself caring a bit more about it. Being a dad, maybe I care a little bit more about it. But it's still not a giant part of, like, I'm happy I'm healthy, but it's not the thing that motivates me to get up and be like, oh yeah, do you know what? In 30 years when I'm able to play with the grandkids, that's really on my mind right now. It's like, it's in the back of the mind, but it's not a big thing. So I don't know what you do with the extremes of the 20-year-olds and the accessibility and the problems that it leads to be honest.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I think, there's a massive experiment going on right now that we'll see the results of in 5-10 years. I was actually at another gym yesterday and saw two guys chatting. One was probably about 40 in amazing shape. The other guy was about 60. Upper body was in amazing shape, but he actually had a crutch.
Right, okay.
Had something wrong with his legs. And they were talking about how much testosterone they were taking,
right,
and the doses and all this sort of stuff. And it just made me reflect on it. Like, for this older guy, he's struggling to walk, but he still wants massive arms. And, and the other guy was like complimenting him, like, "Yo, for your age, you're in such amazing shape." Like, has he got his priorities right? Like, I think at some point you hope that your mindset shifts to
but maybe it doesn't
function.
And maybe it doesn't, especially if like you grew up and that was a big part of your identity for so long. What are you left if that thing disappears? That's a problem we see throughout the fitness industry and lots of stuff is. This might get me into trouble, but I have a theory that a lot of people who get really into fitness have average faces.
That's so good.
And the reason for it is it's not always the case, obviously, but it's, again, I'll put myself happily in this category. Like, if you grow up without lots of attention and you start working out and it does get you a bit more attention, you do differentiate yourself a little bit. That's quite an intoxicating feeling, I think, for a lot of people. I grew up, acne and got a bit chubby because bacon and egg sandwiches were life for a while and chocolate was great, and suddenly I could get my own food. I was like, this has gone wrong and is not leading to the female attention I wished I could have at that point. And so I was like, all right, I can't seem to do anything about the acne. I tried all the medications and creams and everything. And so I was like, well, let's just go to the gym. I can at least be in better shape that way. And that helped. And so that became an identity thing because I was like, I do feel better about myself. I am getting a bit more attention. This is great. This is rewarding. And so for people who maybe weren't those people who grew up in school sometimes as the super popular, attractive one, I think there's a ooh about this that is really captivating, but can become a giant problem if you make that all of your identity because at some point you're going to get older and you're not going to be the attractive 22-year-old you, especially if we're female or something, you were at that point. You're going to be replaced by other 22-year-olds. And even if you're a dude who might be able to get away with it for a bit longer before you're getting past it type thing, you're still going to get past it.
Yeah.
And I think you need many eggs in the baskets of identity and who you are and how you define yourself if you're going to have longevity in this without it fucking your headspace up.
Yeah.
Because we see that for a lot of people. So yeah, it probably is for if you've got to 60 and it's still that giant part, That ship's probably sailed. I don't know how you help that guy.
Yeah, it's rough. No, I think about this a lot 'cause it's the same in sports as well. You see a lot of sports stars, when they retire, they go off the rails and they don't know who they are anymore. How are you personally thinking about that? Do you have where are the eggs in which baskets? Yeah.
Well, mine was probably a little different. So, because I grew up and I went to drama school, so I trained as an actor. And so my early life was spent wanting to perform, and then was spent doing things on stage and bits on screen. And getting in great shape was a big part of like, I feel better about myself, and helped. And I got cast in way too many things where I had to be shirtless, right? But it was tangential to the primary thing that I wanted to be.
Nice.
And so by the time I stopped acting, which, it was 27 or something, kind of like that. It was a good few years after I finished drama school. But that's such a formative time that I think I got through that period with it being a decent part of how I wanted to see myself, but not the primary thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think I found it as difficult with the ups and downs that life has at times to make peace with, crap, I've got on a bit more body fat, or I've got this injury, and oh shit, and all the things that are gonna happen to you kind of through life. So I actually didn't find that particularly challenging. I also, I play bass guitar, I'm a history nerd, just kind of a nerd in general. I like playing video games. I like skiing and being super pretty active. I'll play pretty much any game. So I think either through a combination of just being fortunate that I naturally like a wide range of things, and have had that in mind for a long period of time. And I went through therapy for OCD kind of issues. And so I've been aware of a lot of different stuff for a while. So actually navigating all the identity pieces, I don't think it's been too difficult. So for me, it's kind of, all right, I'm a coach and a business owner, if you want to call it that. My physique is obviously still an important part to me, but less important than it was 10 years ago, for sure. Being a dad is obviously the newest thing in my life. That is the biggest thing in my life. Being a friend and family member, making sure I have some time to read some history crap, and you play some games or play five-a-side. Well, I haven't played for a few months now. Or we'll go play paddle because it's Bali. And I can see why people get into paddle. It's an addictive game. I'm fortunate enough that there's enough things there that actually I don't find it overly difficult. Like you brought up, I always use athletes and mums actually as quite a good example of, if your identity becomes this whole one thing, at some point that's a risky endeavor. It's like just putting all your investments in one place. You're like, might pay off, but it's risky. Too many people, I don't know what happened to that guy's leg. Maybe he was hit by a car and it wasn't his fault, and all that kind of stuff. And, you just don't know what's coming around the corner for you. And if all that you are is that athlete or that physique thing, it's an even bigger, difficult shift to make peace with this shit thing that's happened to you, whether that's a serious illness or it's a serious injury, or it's just you get too old. And your body can't do what it did at 27 anymore. And you have to make a bit of peace with that. And I think that's a difficult process, and it takes time for anybody. But it's even worse if you put everything into that one place. So if all you saw yourself as was, I'm just a mum, that's all I am for 18 years. It's like, well, at some point, hopefully those kids are going to leave, right? And well, then what? Now what? Who are you then? You need something. I'm not saying it shouldn't be the biggest thing and the most important thing, because obviously you need big things in your life that make up a part of how you see yourself. But it's maybe just think about it a bit, pay attention to it a bit, try and cover some bases, try and make sure you actually go, what did I like as a kid? What was I interested in? Because this actually probably leads us into a tangent on coaching, but one of the things that I use quite a lot when coaching normal people, not coaches, was, and I steal this from Dan John, but he used to call it the work, rest, play, pray compass.
Okay.
I kind of have a work, rest, play, social compass, just because I find in the UK we're not so religious, generally speaking. Although I don't mind the concept of pray. But his thing was that a good life balanced work, rest, play, and pray for him, or I'm going to put social in, although play and social overlap a little bit. And because let's say you take someone and they've started dieting, well, that usually means saying no to a bunch of fun things to eat and drink, because food and drink have been a part of human culture for as long as we've ever existed, and always will. We break bread for a reason, for many reasons. But for a lot of people, it's the only fun and social they have in their life. If you look at the play and the social part of that compass and you go, okay, what do you do that sees friends and family? And what do you do each week that puts a bit of a smile on your face that you actually just enjoy doing almost for its own sake? What's in there that isn't food and drink? The number of adults who have nothing in those categories is like really worryingly high. But that's a problem because that means the moment they start dieting, their life fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And it does suck. I'd be like, man, I'm depressed about your life just hearing it. Sometimes you're living under the fucking stairs, just like waiting for the diet to end. And you're like, we got quite a bit of weight to get off. It's going to take a while. So if we don't find a way to see friends and family and put a smile on your face sometimes, like good luck sticking at this.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot in the identity cards, whether you're coaching someone through fat loss or it's navigating doing this for a long period of time. Are you attending to the parts of your life that aren't just fitness related because they still impact the fitness related thing?
It's a really good point. And what do you do if somebody is like that and food and drink is their only interest? How do you help them diversify?
Honestly, I wish I had a great answer, right? Is the long and short. Everyone I've ever spoken to this about, however I was supposed to say that sentence, right? That was a terrible way of describing it. Everyone gets it. Everyone nods and goes, oh yeah, I see that. And some people solve it and some people don't. The thing you try and do most of the time is find what they used to be interested in. Because a lot of the time it's that they've neglected that thing because usually, they're a little older, they're parents, therefore they're running around after the kids, ferrying them to various classes, doing this, that, and the other. They've also got their own work stuff on the top of that. And so when you look at how much time they have in their life that is for them, it's a really small amount. And they're often knackered by the time they get to that small amount. And well, that's a difficult one to solve because it's all well and good going, make sure you carve a bit of time to play Call of Duty with your mate, right? And it's great if you can. And so do it when you can. But it's not always completely feasible. But we still have, that doesn't mean it doesn't have consequences. Just because it's not easy to solve doesn't mean it doesn't have consequences that might be the most important thing for us to deal with this one. To go back to Dan John, because I reference him a lot for things, he tells a story when he was, so Dan's 70-ish now, strength coach in the US, but also has 2 master's degrees. One's in like ancient history and one's in religious studies of some kind. Used to throw the discus to a high level, blah, blah, blah. So a really interesting mix of knowledge and skills and experiences. But in, I think he said the 90s, he was working as a high school teacher and got the opportunity to also then teach adult college classes in the evening, which was an extra full-time level of income, which was pretty transformative for his family and their 2 little kids kind of at the time and what have you. So it was like, this is a really good opportunity, but I'm going to be fucked because that's a lot of work. So thinking of his work, rest, play, pray compass, which he got from a nun years before, he kind of went, all right, if I'm going to say yes to this, I'm just adding to the work pile. That's not sustainable if all I do. So I need to, when I rest, I need to really rest. So the way I'm going to do this, I will say yes to getting this job, said to his wife, Tiffany, at the time, but only if we get a hot tub. And the idea was that every night after he came back at 10 p.m. or whatever, half an hour in the hot tub, I think with a glass of wine or whatever, just him and Tiff going, right? Because, man, that's pressing the accelerator down hard for a long period of time. And like you need some outlets for that. Yeah. So maybe for some of these people, it's that type of outlet where it's not so realistic that we can have all of these things taken care of that we'd like to. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come at a consequence, and you've got to think about it at some point if you want to do something about the negative outcomes that often happen because you're so busy and because you're so low down your priority list. And so I think as coaches, we have to have adult conversations with other adults. And that doesn't mean make it easy because those things aren't easy to solve. And so we have to empathize with the person. We have to try and put ourselves in the shoes. We have to try and understand their situation and what's going on. And then outline consequences, okay, well, if you carry on with this, here's where it probably leads. So you'll probably carry on gaining weight like you have been for the last few years. And in another few years, maybe it gets bad enough that you want to do something about it. Or maybe you just wait till the kids are old enough, but that's a problem because they're 7. Right? So that's going to be a while away yet. So, where is this and what is this? And often you're looking for ways into like their family stories. Oh, well, my mum actually, she had this hip replacement at 70 and, she couldn't do this. And you're like, okay, well, that could be your path if we're not careful for these bits. And you're just trying to find a connection to a person where they feel understood. Because often for coaches, we're like the shiny in-shape stranger who loves broccoli, chicken, and suffering in the gym as far as the client is concerned. Whether that's true is irrelevant. That's how they see you initially. And they often don't want to admit to, stuffing their face with Fox's biscuits at times and eating too much in the car before they get home and hiding the wrappers so people don't see it, or just even turning to food because it's the only nice, comfortable thing in their day or their week when they're so stressed and overwhelmed and run down by stuff. It's like, they don't want to admit to that. That's embarrassing to some degree. It's a bit shameful. I often use the analogy that trusting people when they tell you about what they eat is a bit like trusting someone when they tell you about what porn they search. They're going to play it down. I've never watched Japanese fisting, right? No, just missionary for me. I barely watch it. Like, they're going to do that kind of thing. It's like, keep that in mind, that people don't want to be honest about stuff they're a bit embarrassed about. Yeah. But as a coach, if we don't know the story really, you can't hope to come up with an effective way of dealing with it because you're only dealing with half the information. So being, I think, a good coach is also about building this rapport, building these relationships. And that plays into figuring out how do you help people with hobbies and what else they might do to kind of escape and understand or stick to that. It's all the same thing to some degree for me. Doesn't always mean you can solve it, but if you do a good job of outlining that and they understand it and they go, okay, he is right, and I feel like he does get me and he cares about me and all the rest of this stuff, even if they're not in the place to really change it yet, because that does happen, you'll still be the person they're likely to come back to when it does get time to do those things, or they'll still speak positively about you and all the rest of that stuff. So I'd love to sit here and say, you can solve this issue easily. Here's what you do. But that's not true. You can look for what they used to be into and what they used to like and try and encourage that. You can think about the work, rest, play, social compass type things. But you've also got to sit down conversations and go, look, it's not easy, and see where they can get to. Yeah,
that's really, really useful for a lot of people, I'm sure. And leads us nicely to one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was last time we spoke, you mentioned that you have a lot of online clients and you give them a lot of your time, which I think is what allows you to work at this level with them and understand them, which is a huge part of getting them great results. Yeah. Could you give us some insight into how that actually works? Because I think one of the reasons a lot of people get into online coaching is for freedom and, not too many obligations and time in the diary, but you've almost lent the other way, to your credit. And that's a part of why I think you've done so well. Can you walk us through how that looks from your perspective?
For sure. You're absolutely right. I think online coaching is sold as this freeing dream that you can do this from Bali. And that part is true. You can do it we are in Bali, right? So we've become cliches within the fitness industry. It affords a type of freedom, and that's a location freedom. What it doesn't afford is necessarily a time freedom, an obligation freedom, a stress freedom, all those kind of things. Because I would definitely comfortably tell you that building an online business is far harder than building an in-person one. The ceiling for what you can earn and the number of people you can work with is much higher online. But I have a theory that probably less than 10% of PTs can make online work, whereas 90+% of them can make in-person work if they get the right help and guidance with it. And that's because being an online coach is only half coaching. The other half is content creation. And that's a whole separate set of skills that has almost nothing to do with your technical knowledge as a coach. Like, you might think, but I'm going to be talking about nutrition and stuff. You're like, tangentially. You're mainly telling client stories, trying to come up with interesting and engaging ways to film things, write emails, make, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or whatever your formats are, probably multiple. We're doing a podcast kind of thing, but it's got videos. It's probably going to be a YouTube and it's going to be clipped up for other things. Yeah. You need a whole strategy. It needs to have a clear audience for who it's for, because the biggest issue when transitioning from in-person to online is, as an in-person coach, one of the things I loved, and I'm sure you'd have felt the same way, is I had clients who were 20 and clients who were 70 and everything in between with all kinds of different issues. And I liked that. It was fun. It meant we had to do different things with different people. When you go online, it's not that you can't help 20-year-olds to 70-year-olds. It's that you can't hold both of those people's attention and make the content you make feel relevant to them. Yeah. And if we took out your phone, my mum's phone, whatever, we've got to and we open Instagram and start scrolling, we're going to see quite different things. There might be some people that overlap because we work in fitness and what have you, but we'll still have differences of who we do and who we pay attention to and what we're interested in. And it's that kind of stuff that's so big, is we need to be able to create content that another person wants to engage with for long enough that they start seeing us as, maybe Ash is the solution to my problem.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. And that just takes a really long time. Like I started doing an online thing to some degree back in 2014, 15. It didn't really start taking off until about 2019, 2020 type kind of thing. You know, that first 5-6 years, whatever that was, $1,000 a month, less than $1,000 a month, very, very slowly building. And then I started to figure a few more things out that, oh yeah, content isn't really about education so much. There can be some in it, but it's not the primary thing that gets people to buy into it. And blah, blah, blah. Well, now, okay, so to where I am now. So I work with 80 online clients in a combination of coaching and mentoring kind of capacity. My audience is other PTs. That brings in between 24 and 25K a month as a recurring thing. So, okay, there's no way I'd have got to that in person. This is just not. But I was earning 6 to 7K a month very comfortably as an in-person PT. You can do 30 sessions. And when you go home and you're done. The only time you interact with your clients when you're an in-person PT outside of the gym is when they message to rearrange a session or something. It's not that much. You get, okay, a bit of program writing and a bit of this and a bit of that. But usually you do your sessions, you piss off, you relax, you switch off, you're good. When you go on holiday, you are on holiday. There's nothing to do other than maybe the odd message. Online, that's not even close to true. It's not even close. So, okay, they're looking after the 80 people, so I do 2 long days of check-ins, which are Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday have, on average, 5 to 6 hours of calls, mentoring calls with clients within there. There's at least an hour of WhatsApp replies every day on top of that. So tonight, for example, we're filming this on a Monday. It is currently 11 in the morning. I started check-ins at 7, did like 2.5, best part of 3 hours before I left to come here to film this. When I go back, it's back to more check-ins. I've got 2 calls with 2 new coaching and mentoring clients. I'll circle back to that in a second because it's how I onboard people and how I try and provide a service. And so my last call today finishes at 10 p.m. Now, Mondays and Tuesdays are much longer days, and sticking a podcast in the middle of it adds to the length of the day and all the rest. But that's part of the job.
Yeah.
This right here of making content and doing all that stuff, that's not like additional, no, you get to opt out of it type stuff. That's as essential to this as the coaching arm is. And I might be able to get away with doing less of it for short periods of time, but it will catch up with me if I don't keep churning out content, because there's like a lag time online.
Yeah.
You know, when someone signs up with you, it's not because of the last post you put out in and of itself, right? A friend of mine, Mike Harrison over at Business and Banter, likes to say rather facetiously when people are like, how do I pick up more clients right now? He's like, make better content 6 months ago. And he's right. That is how. When I ask people, how long have you followed me for before signing up? The answer ranges anywhere from 3 months, that's at the low end, to 5 years.
Yeah.
Usually it's between a year to 2 years, is what I would call the average on that. But if it's a 5-year person, like, do you know how much content I've had to make to get you to want to pay me money?
Yeah.
And it's so much, it's such a lot of work. So on top of all those calls and everything else, then there's at least 20 hours of content a week, and I write everything. And then, so if I'm making reels or YouTube things, I pretty much script everything. Not everyone likes to do that, but I find I can read off a teleprompter very easily, acting background-y kind of thing, that for me, that feels very natural and fine. Other people feel stilted by that kind of stuff. Yeah. So fine. But if I'm making several pieces of content kind of a week, like I try and do 2 reels a week, 2 client transformations a week, like a life update and maybe an opinion piece or something kind of like that. And not every week does it follow that exact structure, but I'll be continually writing, continually making content ideas in my phone. I just have a note called contents ideas, and just anything that comes up, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting angle or thought. I'll just scribble that in there. Yeah. Once a week, I'll try and go, right, what am I making this week? This thing. Okay, Sarah's story needs writing up. Steve's story needs writing up. I want to do this piece on how sets and reps are overrated. I want to do this one on this kind of thing, blah, blah. Okay, let's start. Have I got any first drafts of those? Because sometimes I will. If not, okay, first draft. I always do multiple drafts, so it's at least 2. Sometimes it's more depending on the kind of piece. Once I'm happy with that, it's then, okay, let's start making it. I repurpose everything as pretty much a reel, a carousel, and an email. Because for me, good content is good content. If it has an interesting opening line, if it's relevant to the audience, if it's told well and has a good flow to it, that's true whether it's visual or written or kind of whatever. The essence of that is true. You might just space it a little bit so that it's not all on one day is the same thing. But if you're going to put time and effort into the thing and you make it good, use it and use it as much as you can, because you're going to say the same things a lot.
Yeah.
You just are. It's a bit like coaching someone. Guess what? You're going to talk about calories a lot. You're going to talk about movement a lot. You're going to you best get used to repeating yourself a lot, because that's the essence of almost any business, I suppose. So that then gets done. Once I've made all of those things, I try and batch make reels, or when I'm filming. So if I was hiring somewhere like this, like, cool, I'm going to go in, I'm going to hire it for 3 hours. I've got 11 scripts to get through. And then I send them off to a video editor. So the only person I currently employ and pay money to that does work for me is video editing. Mm-hmm. I think when people are starting out, it's helpful to do your own video editing, because you'll learn about what it's like to be on camera, what to do, what not to do, what's out, in a way that if you don't do any of your own editing, you won't. So I did my own editing for the best part of 10 years. But it is a time costly process. So it's definitely one of those ones that at a certain point I'm like, if you're going to outsource something, that's a good thing to outsource. Yeah. So that's kind of how I try and run the content-y side of things. That's kind of an overview for how the week kind of looks and runs. So there's stuff, it's rare that you get a full day off, to be honest. You're always doing something. Then it's about building relationships, I think, with people, because everything I advocate for coaches who want to be successful, whether they're in person or online, is you have to be a really good coach first and foremost, because the thing that will underpin everything that you get or are able to do is results for other people and the relationship you build with other people. They're the two foundational parts of a coaching business, relationships and results. I'm therefore wary of anything that undermines either of those. So and there was a period, I think we're seeing less of it in the industry, but there was a period of time where people were advocated to do less coaching and outsource stuff and, have another coach who coaches the people who sign up to you, or have a traffic light system was one of them, where if these guys are doing fine, you barely need to talk to them. They're the greens, right? And it's just that's bollocks, right? So one of the guys I work with so the PT Project is a company I share with a guy called James. And then I run my own stuff separate to that. So we do some events and some stuff together as part of this company. And then my own thing also lives under the sort of umbrella of it, but it's separate to it. But Jimbo was, 70 kind of clients kind of area, really successful business, and was told to do this kind of stuff by the person he was working with at the time. And so he had another coach who worked for him, also called James, who was a great coach. Two Jameses. The other James is a great coach and a really lovely dude. But his retention was much lower than Jimbo's, because people signed up to Jimbo, not James. It'd be a bit like if people came in and wanted to work with Ash, or they came in, they wanted to work with me. And I went, yeah, great. Here's Rob. I'm like, who the fuck is Rob? I haven't built a relationship. Rob might be great, but I don't know who he is. That's not what I thought I was coming in for. Because the relationship part is a huge part of retention and everything kind of else. And they've bought in, especially if you're online, they've bought into you. They've been watching you and your content, not whoever the hell this other person is. Yeah. It's not that you can't have other people within your business, but you need to be smart about how you do that thing if you're going to do it well. And then same with the traffic light thing. It's no, don't do less for people. That's a terrible idea. But that, as a result of following that, Jimbo, and he doesn't mind me saying this, went from 70 clients down to 30. Whoa. His income went and fell right off a cliff. When he stopped doing all that and got back to doing the right things, he's back up full again now at 60 odd something. He lowered the numbers, I think, for a little period of time, because he also has twins who are 18 months old, and Jaden, his little boy's 5, I think now. So, busy and all the rest of that jazz. But that was never because he was a bad coach or anything else, but he undermined the fundamentals because of just what I would call bad business advice that might have paid off initially. Because initially you go, I'm working less, and yet the income's still good. And so there might be that initial moment of, this feels like a good thing. But I think you've always got to be wary of don't confuse short term with long term, because there's a lag for the consequences on a bunch of these things. So for me, it is about going out of your way in order to get better results and build relationships. So one of the things I probably do differently than most online coaches, although I think I've been encouraging a lot of people to do this same thing, so hopefully it's improving. If it does, just credit me, right? But it's one of the big things I advocate for is the 2-hour onboarding call. So if a new client comes in, especially if they're normal, if they're not a PT is really what I mean by that, right? So if they're a PT, I can onboard them usually in an hour. I did one last night. It was about an hour and a half. But that's actually more to do with this person suffering with joint pain and lots of other stuff that we wanted to look at. But if you're onboarding a normal client as an online coach, most of the time it's a fat loss goal, right? Well, the biggest barrier to fat loss is what goes in your mouth hole, and that's not really what we're doing in the gym. That's what happens outside of it. And as we said earlier, the biggest barrier to that is the fact that people don't tell you the truth because they see you as this shiny, aspirational, oh, wow, yeah, kind of thing. So it's so important to get a good result that you build this relationship and this honesty and this openness early on. That's an essential part of a skill of getting a result. And this actually came about because it was maybe 6 months ago, something like that, maybe a bit longer. I was having a conversation with a mentoring client about how to get results with clients, and he wanted to pre-record a load of educational content. And I was like, you can, but if I'm honest, I don't know that it changes the results that much for normal people. I have pre-recorded educational content for my mentoring clients, but that's because they sign up for educational content, right? When a client signs up because they want to look better naked, that doesn't necessarily mean they want to be educated on how to look better naked. And I think a lot of coaches, this was me for a very long time, confuse being technically correct about information with coaching. Those ain't the same thing. Like, I have a sentence that I say a lot, which is your job is not to be right, it is to be helpful. And I thought being right about stuff was being helpful for way too long. And yet helpful is about being much more practical about things and sometimes knowing when to pick your battles and what to push on and what to not, and where to meet someone. But the onboarding thing starts with when we evaluated what seemed to make the biggest difference to client results. It wasn't pre-recorded material, because I made a load of it on here's how to track calories and here's what protein is and here's and then no one watched it. 3 of your clients watch it, the rest don't. And they don't because they ask you questions that tell you they didn't watch that video you sent them, because if they had, you've already answered that question. And so part of you is frustrated because you're like, yeah, but I made something for that. It's like, I know, but they didn't sign up for education. That they wanted this coaching process, and we need to make some peace with that. So I was like, so what made the biggest difference to client results for me was sitting down more regularly and approaching nutrition not as something we did round the squat rack, which is a normal part of coaching. Everyone has those conversations where you're like, how's food been this week? Yeah, fine. Like, I'm not saying don't do that, because everyone does that. That's super normal. But for me, the conversations about nutrition around the squat rack, or insert whatever piece of kit here you like, they're the equivalent of cueing versus coaching. So for me, the difference between cueing and coaching, cueing is like a quick reminder or a reinforcer of something. Do this, and then they do. But if I was to say, all right, let's find the tension in a muscle, whatever, it's like, okay, there it is. And then that might be a great cue if you already know what I mean and the position to get in and how to generate that and everything else. If you don't know what I mean by that in terms of how that feels, it's a useless cue. And most cues, I think that most of us say, are useless, because here's how you know. If you say it 3 times and the thing doesn't change, they don't understand what you're saying. It doesn't matter how clearly you say it. They physically don't understand it. And that's not because they're an idiot per se. It's that words aren't movement. And so you saying words don't mean the person understands how to move. So we have to, if cueing doesn't solve it, that means we've got to coach. And coaching is teaching for me. It's like, all right, let's get back up. Let's poke, let's prod, let's move, let's video, let's show right, let's show wrong, let's close our eyes, show me it right, show me it wrong. What does that feel like to you? Figure out what that is in their words so I can then start using their words for the cueing process. But I have to go back and I have to coach. I have to teach this movement so they get it, so that they feel confident when we do it. And then I can use a cueing reminder, because then it's fine. Nutrition coaching doesn't happen around the squat rack. That's nutrition cueing, right? Nutrition coaching is, let's sit down at a table, like let's go sit in the staff room, in the consultation room, let's go sit in a coffee shop. If they're an online client, let's sit on Zoom, right? And let's come up with a plan. Because what I need them to do is, when they leave this, to know exactly what to do and how to do it, and ideally even to have practiced doing some of it. And so for me, I use a thing I call 2 P's, 2 S's, and an E within the onboarding process. I tried to come up with a snappier acronym, but it didn't work. Right. So 2 P's, 2 S's, and an E. This lives under the umbrella of calories. So let's say we have a client and they're on 2,000 calories.
Yeah.
Why not? That's relevant to their goal, all the rest of it. Okay. Next question we've got is, how many meals do they like having a day? And by meals, I mean anytime any food goes in their mouth. So most people, it's between 3 to 5, right? It could be 3 main meals and a snack, 3 main meals and 2 snacks, however they want to divvy that up, fine. And as long as someone doesn't say 1 or 19, usually it's fine. So once we've got that, now, okay, this is our umbrella, calories and number of meals. Cool. Next question is, are you someone who likes having the same number of calories each meal? So let's say we're doing 4, so 500, 500, 500, 500. Or are you a bit less hungry at breakfast and you want a bit more for kind of dinner? Or so, okay, it's 300 here, but then sweet, let's have 700 for dinner and with 300 snack, 300 breakfast, 500 lunch. And again, unless it's a stupid number of I would like 10 calories for breakfast, where I'd be like, well, it's just a coffee then, right? Which is fine. We're just not going to call that a meal per se. So as long as it's not stupid, we go with their answer. Yeah. All right, cool. This is our construction to begin with. Then at each meal, I like 2 P's, 2 S's, and an E. And that stands for protein, plants, simple, satiating, and enjoyable. Now, I tried to come up with the 5 P's at one point of protein, plants. I was like, satiating could be filling, like pH. But literally, I thought pleasurable for a job. And I was like, simple, I just couldn't come up with a like P. And I was like, I'm trying too hard to crowbar this. Yeah. So I was like, fuck it, it's 2 P's, 2 S's, and an E. And that's when we look at each of those meals, we could improve it with this lens. Does that meal contain at least 30 grams of good quality protein? If no, we could improve it with that. Does this meal contain some fruit and veg, some plant life? If no, we could improve it that way. Is it simple enough for them and the day that they're in, what time it is, blah, blah, blah. If no, well, we're going to need to make something simpler. Like if I've got a client and they've got a private chef, lots of things become very simple. I've yet to get to that point, and I don't think I've had a client with a private chef yet. But that would change things. Satiating, does it stand a chance of making them reasonably full for a reasonable period of time? So, if it's a liquid versus a solid plays a role in that. How big the actual meal is, whether there's protein in it, whether there's some fat in it, what's the fiber like? All of those things that you might explore to make something a bit more filling. And then enjoyable, and this is actually the most important one from the relationship building perspective. So enjoyable, I go, right, I need you to like whatever we come up with on this meal sort of plan or template here, at least a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Mm-hmm. The key part is what I do next, which is I go, so we need to first decide what your 10s are. So my 10s as Paul are a Domino's Meteor pizza, the barbecue base with all the fucking meat. Yeah. I want the big fat garlic and herb dip that's like 800 calories a tub, which is depressing, but it's fucking good, right? And probably 2 of them, because if I'm getting a large, like happy days. I'm any donut, basically. I'm a donut guy, but Sainsbury's jam donuts in particular, or the Krispy Kreme Biscoff donut, stop it. It's all good. Fox's biscuits, but I want like a sharing tray. Biscuits and chocolates, I don't want one bar of the same. I'm non-monogamous when it comes to biscuit and chocolate choice. Like I want a mix, right? If you're executing me tomorrow, those are probably, maybe a sticky toffee pudding as I'm speaking right now. It sounds pretty good as well. But those are like my 10s. So as for doing this, for the example of doing it, what are yours as Ash? Like what's your 10?
Huge burger.
From where? Where would
Black
you go?
Bear Burger in London is the one that I get out.
Where's Black Bear?
They have a few now, but I think the original was in Box Park in Shoreditch. Mm-hmm. They also have one in Market Halls in Victoria. Nice. There's one in Vauxhall or Brixton, Food Village. And there's one in Chancery, near Chancery Lane, Exmouth Market, which is where I used to live. So that's right up there. Although I make a burger myself, which competes with the Black Bear Burger. Yeah. So me and a couple of mates every Friday, whenever we could, we'd do Friday night burgers. Nice. And it was fine-tuned over many years, the specific...
What was in the thing?
So the key, everything's from M&S to make it a one-stop shop.
Great choice already. M&S anything is just...
And it's just got better over the years. But the burger is their best ever burger, which is infused with bone marrow, which is the crucial part. We also have 2 small slabs of halloumi
Yeah.
and some smoked bacon.
Great.
And very thinly sliced Japanese beef tomatoes and red onion.
Japanese beef tomatoes.
Yeah.
Very,
So
this is niche.
we used to do regular beef tomatoes, and then one day we saw the Japanese ones, and they were even better. So, but the knife has to be super sharp, so it's almost
You got to get it real thin.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly,
right.
like 1/10 of a millimeter. Then organic baby gem lettuce, just one perfectly sized leaf.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
And then the base is mayonnaise with red onion chutney. And the roof has M&S special special burger sauce, and it's a brioche bun, which is grilled, not toasted, only on the inside.
Yeah.
So the outside stays soft,
fluffy. Yeah.
But
Okay.
it's got enough of a sort of toasted crust to not break down with all.
Yeah.
the
It doesn't go
sauces.
completely mushy.
Yeah. So
This is one of the best answers I've ever heard to this, and I've asked this question a lot. Niche. Here's the thing, right? The thing that I think is the key when you're doing this with a client is that level of detail. Because if you just say to someone, "Oh yeah, I love junk food.
Yeah.
I love burgers."
Yeah.
Fuck off. No, you don't. You're just making it up to make me feel bad. If you go in with the detail of that, right? Or it's the Domino's Meteor barbecue base, you get me that garlic and herb dip, and you get me those down. Like, all right, maybe I'm starting to kind of trust him. And you can have a bit of fun with it and a bit of banter with this. I remember I did this on stage, a talk I was giving once, and I asked this out to the audience, and one guy was like, sourdough, and I was like, fuck off. So, like, don't get me wrong, I don't mind sourdough, it's perfectly fine. That is not, if your deathbed meal is sourdough, it's not even the best bread. Get me a tiger loaf, right? Outrageous behavior. But you can have a bit of fun with it. It kind of lightens, and you're just starting to like build a relationship with another human being where, you know, you're a bit more on a par with each other, because there isn't a technically right or wrong answer to that question, even if you mock them for their shit choice of sourdough, right? So you go, okay, well, there's our 10s. We pretty much then accept that when dieting, we're not going to have them regularly, because all of the 10s are just calorie dense as all hell, basically. So yeah, we can have them, but it might be, for the time being, we keep them for, you know, a birthday or something a bit more kind of special rather than a regular thing. But if that's the 10, I want whatever we come up with to be like a 6 or a 7. So, okay, I want you to still like this. And having done that little game of being honest about it, and I sometimes call it confess your sins. If you want a client to be open with you, have you been open with them? Have you been honest with them about the struggles in your life, or when you've done certain things and stuff that you don't want to admit to? Because, you know, there's a lot made for coaches about walking the walk, and I agree with it. You do need to. But for me, walking the walk is broader than just what you look like. That's part of it. But it's also like, do you embody all the things you'd like to see from a client? If no, there's a bit of a call to arms there to be like, well, you need to work on that, because you're a hypocrite otherwise to ask clients to do something you do not do yourself. So you start building this relationship. We sit down, we're like, right. I then point out several things. So I've done the 2 P's, 2 S's, and an E. We have fun with the enjoyable part. They understand the framework now. I'm like, right, here's the pen and paper. Slide it across to them. We're going to come up with 2 or 3 different options for each of these meals that you can turn to without having to think too hard, right?
Yeah.
And I often point out, like, something that's a 7 out of 10, if you have it every single day for weeks on end, very quickly becomes a 4 for most people. There's some exceptions based on the type of person, but for me it does. I'm like, I'm bored of this fucking meal. So again, having some options about what they look like and go, all right, here you go. So what do we currently do? And what's your current breakfast? What's your current kind of lunch? And again, you're always pushing for like, and don't give me the bullshit like, tell me, oh, it's fucking salad, Paul. Like, fuck off, right? Give me the truth here. I want to know what your inner food goblin actually kind of eats, not the best version of you trying to present to me right now. It's really important that you say those things out loud and you make fun of it and you make it light, right? Yeah, okay, cool. And then so whatever we come up with, we then go, all right, so we've got this. Now let's run it through the 2 P's, 2 S's, and E lens. Does it have protein? Does it have plants? Is it simple? Is it filling? And is it enjoyable? Filling meaning satiating. And you go, no, okay, well, what could we work on? And not every meal has to tick every box every time. So my partner, Jess, is vegan and I'm not, but we use Gusto. There you go. So if anyone listening is not so familiar, Gusto, HelloFresh in the UK are like, not quite meal delivery services, because they don't give you the meal. They give you the ingredients to make the meal and like a recipe card for how to kind of make it. And they're really good, right? So we've used them for ages. My evening meal, therefore, because I'm dating a vegan, often doesn't have protein ticked in it. Because I pretty much give her the guidance of like, look, you can pick whatever you like for the meals. She's in charge of picking the meals. Just try and make it around 500 calories for me, right? As long as it's around there, I don't care if it's 450 or 570, it's close enough, right? Then it'll be fine. So if she picks things that are sweet potato or black bean based or something kind of like that, the protein in that meal is often 10 grams, 12 grams. It's pretty low. If she picks something that's tofu based or tempeh based, it's often higher and might get around the kind of 30 mark. But if I look at it, I go, well, does it contain enough protein? Let's say no. Does it contain plants? Yeah, most vegan meals should contain a bunch of plants or you're really doing it wrong.
Meals,
right? Yeah, exactly. Simple. Well, given that Jess cooks 80% of them, it's very simple for me to have those, so yes. Satiating, yeah, they are pretty filling. And I never thought I would enjoy vegan meals, if I'm honest. But actually, yes, they are actually quite enjoyable. So they don't tick the protein one, but they tick family time for me and some other kind of... So I'm like, well, that's good enough. Because especially if the rest of my day, I still get to okay, I've not quite hit the 180 I might want to hit for the day because this meal lets me down, but I'm still at 150, 160. And you know what? That's good enough, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of fine. I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder and stuff kind of these days. Yes, I want to still look a certain way, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with normal people, we don't have to nail... Is it still a lot better than what they were currently doing? That might be fine. You might have different ones on different days. I think of an old client of mine, Amelia. When she was working from home or working from the office, we had different lunch goals. So she fucking loved light baby bells. She loved cheese, right? So her thing was, when she was working from home, we had bagel thins with some like salmon and a bit of cream cheese and some other stuff. And then like 3 light baby bells. So like 5 grams of protein per baby bell and like 20 odd or 40. I forget exactly how many calories, but they're pretty low in calories, maybe 40 calories per thing. I think it's 40 per thing. So you're like, sweet. When she was in the office was next to an M&S food hall. So it's then like, right, I don't care what you have. It's 500 calories for the lunch. Make sure that there's some protein and plant life in there and it fits within that. If it does, whatever you pick is fine. Great. As long as that person is clear on what it is, what they're picking and how they go and do it. Yeah. So you're looking at doing that. And then the big next step that I found was super helpful. So the first biggest one that made a difference for most clients was when we started sitting down. I didn't have this exact framework, but I was doing something similar without knowing it. But giving the client the pen and paper, them having to write it, I'm just here to guide the conversation and guide the exploration. When we started doing that, that definitely led to much better rates of compliance and better normal days. And to some level, no shit, right? But the other bit that I started adding in was get their phone out. And if you're using MyFitnessPal or whatever it is that you're using to track it, get them to start entering it in right there and then. Like get them to practice that skill because most coaches will be familiar with doing stuff like that. They'll be familiar with an app and know how to use it. But most of your clients won't be to the same degree. And those little barriers of, I've got to figure out how to use this thing. I'm already tired and maybe tomorrow. That's just a barrier we can break down right here because we can just do it together, right? So do it together, like get it out. And that sounded questionable, right? This is going to be a weird transition to that sentence. It reminds me of Jess's mum. But I remember watching, so actually in Bali, so Jess's parents, David and Julie, flew out and spent 2 weeks in Bali with us over in Prairana. And so we got their flights, but they're what I would call slightly nervous travelers. Right? They don't mind the travel, but they want to like check that everything is still running on time. And they want to check that 6 weeks in advance and every day on the run up to it. So, we booked the flights. They then had to get the Qatar Airlines app. Now, Jess actually did a great job of coaching her mum through this because I remember watching it and thinking it because she didn't just do it for her. She sat next to her mum while her mum had her phone and did the slightly older person thing of using one finger at a time. Going J, U, L, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. Which, if you're someone who's fast on a phone, is a painful thing to sit with. You're like, oh, okay, fine. But Julie then learned how to make a login, get the flight details added and the booking details on there so she could check it whenever she wanted to, which was the point because it needed to reassure her. So if Jess had done that for her, she wouldn't have been able to reassure herself and that would have been a failure of coaching. That's doing something for someone. A lot of coaching is about being next to someone while they do it themselves and getting them confident in doing that thing so they can also do it without you there sometimes. And so it's like, right, let them, and it's going to be a bit painful, and part of you is going to be like, God, we could do this faster, but get them to save a recipe, get them to input it, get them to like explore how they change the serving size of a thing, and do it with them on the call or in person in the session. And it's like, to cover all of that in the first time you meet someone really and get them going is a lot. That's why it's 2 hours, because you've got to build a lot of rapport, a lot of relationship stuff, get them comfortable, start exploring. It's just like, you will take the whole 2 hours, I promise you, with a normal person, but it will make a massive difference to them getting off to a good start. Doesn't solve everything, because what you've come up with is just what I call like their default day, a Monday, a Wednesday, a Thursday type day, but they're going to, run into other situations, and we need to coach those as well. I also like doing the first check-in as a live call. So rather than Loom-based in the usual way kind of check-ins are run, the first one is, let's jump back on a call for half an hour and go, how'd you get on? What went well, what didn't? Because again, I'm trying to build a relationship quickly with a person I don't know yet, and keep adding to that and give them clear answers. Look for any hesitations, look for anything I feel like they're a little uncertain about or whatever, and either reassure or solve that problem or whatever it is we need to do. Because again, when you look at new clients coming in, especially online, because in person, we've all had clients who, Jono, my longest serving in-person client, was nearly 12 years, came with me from David Lloyd to Gymbox and then back to the private studio I moved to after that, like followed me around multiple gyms. He lost, I think, 10 kilos in the first 3 to 6 months of us working together, and then looked no different for the next decade, right? Right? Just looked a little older, right? But he paid me like 70 grand or something over that kind of period of time. He was perfectly happy with the service because he was with me for the best part of 12 years or whatever it kind of was. In-person clients, they might start with a goal in mind, but they'll often keep it going because they like turning up to the gym with you there. They have a slightly better session with you. They like you as a person. They recognize often that the gym is good for them, but they're not always that psyched to bother going. It's like, great. I've got, from the 12 years I did in-person PT, and I'm 16 years in now, I've got like 6, maybe 7 really impressive visual transformations of like, wow. And that's because most in-person PT clients don't want to get shredded, right, and do a photo shoot. They want to lose 5 to 15 kilos or something kind of like that. Normal amounts of weight loss. They want to move a bit better. They don't want their joints to hurt so much. They want to build a bit of muscle. They want to be a bit fitter, healthier, and all the cliched normal shit, right? And that's great. But online, people tend to want to get a more obvious result. They don't come for an online coach because they struggle to go to the gym just by themselves necessarily. You get some of that, but most of them, it's all right, so we've got to get somewhere. So if you then go, one of the most important things for a client doing well or staying with you, I think, is getting off to a good start. And so when you reverse engineer the question of what makes people do well and get off to a good start, I realized it was more face-to-face time. It was more clear help. It was more practical guidance, not being technically correct about whether or not you didn't need to be on keto. That's irrelevant, right? You don't need to always be right. You need to be helpful on those kind of things and pick your battles with that stuff. And so I was like, all right, the onboarding thing needs to really get that person off to a very clear start where they feel heard, listened to, and very clear about what to do and how to do it. And then a week later, let's sit back down. So if it's in person, it's like before we even get out in the gym, assuming this is a fat loss client, just for the record, let's sit back down and do nutrition coaching, not nutrition cueing again. Now that sit down might be 5 minutes of, oh yeah, no, it's gone great. Okay, cool. Needs to cover anything else? Like, no, I'm good. You're like, right, let's get out there then. Or it might be suddenly they start telling you about a whole manner of different stuff. I had a client, Rose, who was with me for 2 years as a younger coach, and I trained Rose and Chris, both females in their 50s at the time. Chris is one of the most impressive before and afters I will ever have, because at 60, she went from 100 kilos to just under 60 kilos. Full six-pack, shredded, had breast cancer in that time, half a thyroid out, financial director for the Civil Aviation Authority with two kids, like loads of reasons to not be in great shape, but got in unbelievable shape. Now, she lost 30 of those kilos over the first 9 months. Then we stayed there for a couple of years and then pushed on to a shoot because she fancied doing one then. But Chris and Rose started with me at the same time. Rose had 25 kilos less to lose type thing. I gave them the same advice, the same help, the same guidance. Chris lost loads of weight. Rose probably lost 3 maybe in that same period of time. And I could never figure out why. And I was like, is their metabolism fucked? 2 years in, she eventually confessed to Chris, not even to me, which means I didn't do a good job on this, that she'd been eating every single day a slab of cheese with butter slathered on it.
Nice.
Which is legit, right? Yeah. Like if I was trying to come up with a way of not losing weight, if I was trying to come up with a weight gaining plan, I don't know that I've got a better one than here's a load of cheese with butter on it. But I'm impressed she lost any weight. If she was doing that every day, was what the hell? But she never told me that. And that's a failing on my part as a coach, that I didn't make this client feel comfortable enough to do that, because I didn't think about that. I didn't know how to do that. It wasn't part of my thought process as a coach. So, that might be maybe 2 years before a client confesses something to you. And sometimes you get really serious ones. Like I have had, really randomly, in the last chunk of time, like 2 separate clients who've told me they've been raped before as teenagers, and that played a big role in a whole bunch of different stuff for them. One of which, in fact, not this one, a previous one, I had an old client who that had happened to in their teenage years, and they'd gained a bunch of weight as a result, as a protective mechanism. If I'm less attractive, then this will be less threatening. But that meant every time she tried to lose weight, all those feelings and fears and stuff came up. And, I'd like to say that we solved that, but we didn't. So who knows how she's doing now. But you will have big, awful reasons sometimes that you're going to deal with clients. And you'll have ones that are a piece of piss and you're going to have everything in between.
Yeah.
And being a great coach means having the skills to meet any of those people, wherever they are in their kind of journey with those things. And it's one of the great ironies of probably where I am as a coach now, that in some sense, I get the best results I ever have now. But that's mainly because I also attract people who they want to do a photo shoot. They want to do this thing. They're ready to engage in that. They're PTs. They already know a load of different stuff. The ones who sometimes get the best results are the easiest ones to coach, the ones who require the least coaching. They just need pointing in the right direction and a few kind of things here and there, but it's pretty straightforward. Sometimes the people who need the most coaching don't always get you the biggest results, but that doesn't mean you didn't pay a really big, impactful, important part of their process and journey. And it's almost anyone can get these other people in good nick, right? It's what can you do with the difficult clients, I think, that is the bigger barometer of great coaching. And for me, again, that all started with, I don't think our industry talks enough about relationship building as being a crucial part of especially fat loss coaching.
Yeah.
I would say of coaching of any kind. But for me, therefore, that underpins the whole thing of going, I would undermine what I value and I think what I stand for as a coach if I didn't. It means, okay, I've got to be on call. So I've got to be on a call at 9 p.m. tonight, which I'd much rather not be, right? Fuck you, Andrew. But that's the right thing to do because he started with me last week. And, we got to get this kind of thing going and I want to get off to a good start. And so because I'm actually off this week, Wednesday to Sunday, because it's the last part of our Bali trip, so I've got a few days of holiday and then we're flying back on the Sunday, land back on the Monday, busy first week. I'm like, I don't have much time available to put him in somewhere else. So it's like, all right, well, let's go out of your way. I don't care that I start at 7 p.m. Then I'm going to finish at 10 p.m. or start at 7 a.m. and finish 10 p.m. Like if that's what it needs to do, that's what it needs to do. I'm not saying aim to do that every day. You will definitely die. But if that's what's required, especially in the early part of getting a client going, and you think that's just the right thing as a human, that will also get a better client result and all the rest. Is like, why are you not doing that? That is what you should do. Yeah.
There's so many valuable messages in there. And I'll definitely re-listen to this because I think there's a lot of things that really resonated with me that I would like to embody more. But I think one of the recurring themes in a lot of your message is spending more time with people to focus on that relationship. And I think there's a tension with a lot of the standard advice in that is not scalable. Yeah. And the first thing that my brain jumped to when you said you had 80 clients and you spend this much time with them, I'm like, well, how does that actually work? Like, do you not sleep? Like, where does this come from? And so in terms of growing your business, how do you reconcile the fact that each of your clients actually has a big time cost to run and maintain versus growing the business?
So I think there's probably several bits in it. One, it's a lot of hours. So there's I don't want to sit here and be like, no, I do 40. Like, nah, it's 60-ish probably on an average kind of week. Maybe some weeks a bit less, some weeks a bit more kind of thing, depending on whether I'm doing other things. So it's a bunch of hours. But then I get paid very, very well. So, 24, 25K a month is, the first bunch of years as a PT, I didn't earn that a year, right? It's kind of a mental place to be. Cliche, we're moving to Dubai. Yeah. And the reason for that is the tax savings and going, well, if I just put 10 to 15 a month away into investments and sensible savings, in about 7 years' time, I can kind of go, I don't need to do very much. I will still do this because I enjoy this, but I'd love to do a third the amount. I would love to have that. So one part of how do you see that is I also only see it for a shortish period of time where I go, I don't actually need to grow it beyond where it is right now. I just need to sustain it and go, hang on, 6 years ago was COVID. Okay, now that's gone fast. Yeah. So if I just do the same length of time again, then I can be in a position where, I can semi-retire. And well, I never thought that would be a part of life by my early to mid 40s kind of thing. So, okay, that's motivation to some degree to go, yeah, I can push this for that length of time. If I thought I had to do this for the next 25 years, I would scale it back because I'd be like, nah, okay. that's tiring. So there's that. The other bits I think are, this is much more time costly initially, but it eases off. Mm-hmm. So the longer a client has been with you, if they require this much effort and time to begin with, once they've been with you for a bunch more months, it diminishes with spikes, right? If something's going on in someone's life, okay, there's going to be a spike there. But actually, once you've had a client for 9 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, they require a lot less looking after. Mm-hmm. With the mentoring side of things, that's an hour call like this each month on top of their kind of coaching, and then 4 group calls. Those are Thursdays at midday. So there's a bunch of stuff that's made within there that they can kind of get through. So there's lots of extra value for them. I try and do 4 anatomy and training kind of workshop things each year. So they get to come down to kind of those things, which builds a bit more rapport, builds more relationships, gives them more skills. The more skills I can give them when we're in the gym working with clients, the more likely they'll stay with me for longer because they recognize the value of like, oh, this does help me and this does pay off. And that's a big part of it. I do last year I started a yearly client ski trip. Nice. So that was mainly an excuse to write off a ski trip, pretend we were working. Yeah. We talk a little bit of work, but it's mainly skiing. And the next one this year, it looks like there was 9 of us on the first one. This one could be anywhere from 18 to 30, depending on quite how many people confirm as yeses. If you want to come, let me know. Okay. So like, I'm always trying to do things with people and put them together in stuff because I just believe in that. But as a result of those things, again, a lot of those clients will be easier to look after. And once they've been doing it for a while, they're actually great people to have in your community sometimes. If I think of Jason, Luke, and Lucas, and Gav, and Sarah, and people who've been with us for a while who are doing really well in their careers, in the WhatsApp group that we have for everybody who does mentoring type stuff with us, they help each other loads, right? They give advice, they relate to the problems that they've got or other clients are kind of having within there. They're good people to have in the community. And honestly, also, I really enjoy having a positive impact on someone's life to some degree. Like, so much of coaching is dealing with people's crap that it is draining at times, and there's no getting around that. That's what the job involves. So it's really nice when you have those moments where someone is buying a house for the first time, or if I think of my client Nate started with us on benefits, right? And he got a government grant, didn't know they gave these, for doing this level 1 coaching course we have. Bought that for the 300 quid or whatever it is, applied the things from it, got a couple of clients, and was like, right, I'm going to invest with Paul. And he does 5.5K a month as an in-person PT, doing 30 hours a week kind of thing, and that will only, I think, he's close to 6. He's close to his first one. And that's 2 years' time. But I remember he messaged me a few months after we started being like, I just wanted to share this with you, that I was just out and his little boy's called Ted. Teddy just asked for a little toy in one of the shops we were in. I just bought it in without thinking about it or worrying about it. And I was like, that's awesome, right? Because one of his goals was to not feel ashamed about that, to not feel like, fuck, I want to be able to provide for my boy. And it's embarrassing crap to have to be like, oh, no, not today. I'm not saying you should buy him a toy every single time you go anywhere, right? So maybe not today is a legit answer. But for that to be a choice, and for him then to have got to this point now where he's been through RTS at times, and he's taken the family away on holidays and is saving for a house, and he's done a couple of photo shoots, and you've had this big impact on someone's life. And I'm really fortunate that none of my clients are assholes, which is great, because that's just really lovely. It's lovely to see that impact that you have on people, because I wouldn't be here without my mentors through the years. Yeah. And yeah, the money is obviously a big motivator and a big part of how I see this. But I think anyone who gets into fitness, if you got into this just for cash, I'm like, go into finance. It's going to be easier to make money than to make money doing kind of this. So for me, I'm like, okay, it might not be overly scalable from where I am right now. Mm-hmm. But I'm also okay with that. Like, it doesn't have to be overly scalable from here. There are things you could do, but like I have an agreement with RTS not to sell mechanics courses, right? Which is one of the things I'm sort of known for and help PTs with. And you go, there's an opportunity there for something I could scale more. But I don't want to, because I've told Tom Purvis that I won't, and I don't want to try to step on toes kind of within that. And that relationship means more to me than making a bit more money from this kind of thing. Like I have, last year, 9 of my clients went through RTS level 2 altogether, which is in the UK with a guy called Michael Goulden. And so I jumped on with them just because it was rewarding and cool. I've probably sent 40 clients, something like that, through RTS in the UK. And most of them have been through at least twice now. Certainly all the guys I was just mentioning there. But we're now going out to Oklahoma next September for a private RTS. So RTS levels, the final level is called Mastery, and that's 9 days with Tom Purvis, the founder of it, in Oklahoma. Well, there's 8 of them who are now at that point to go through that. So I'm going to go out with them and do that. And so being able to go to the bar afterwards during these 9 days and hang out with them and sit with Tom and be like, because this was such a big part of my life and career. The first time I sat there drinking with Tom, I was like, fucking hell, this is really cool. That's Tom Purvis. So to be able to like take clients through stuff that has been so impactful to me, and to meet Michael and Tom and the people who've played a big role in my own life and career, I find that rewarding. I really like that. And so, I guess you get to define what your own business success is to some degree within that. If it's just scalable cash, then okay, yeah, this will have a bottleneck to it. But that's not my definition of success beyond here. I'm very comfortable and happy with this bit. And yeah, okay, I've got some ideas for things I'd like to run. And I'd like to run a 12-week becoming fully booked as an in-person PT type course with a bunch of things they'll be able to use and do, because I don't think they're giving good advice for that. And I think I can help that. And that'll touch on some mechanics things. Got to clear that with Tom and stuff. Make sure he's okay with me putting a bit in here and going, look, go to RDS after. But I think that has some scalableness to it. Yeah. We'll see. So I'm looking for ways to kind of do it. But still, this piece is the fundamental part for me that I'm going, I have to protect this. Running a couple of, so I run client photo shoots each year. So I do 2 group shoots a year, May and October/November, depending on when we're doing it. When I started selling those for PTs, the business grew a lot. And I'd spent best part of 10 years from about 2010, 2011 through to 2020 doing photo shoots and competing and stuff myself. And just for some reason, I hadn't really lent into selling them. That period in the industry where everyone was convinced that anyone doing any kind of comp was immediately going to get eating disorders and everyone was fucked. I was like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't sell these things. In spite of the fact I'd never had that problem. And I'd been through OCD treatment, so I understood the issues plenty, and I've prepped a lot of people, none of whom have yet to develop an eating disorder from. So, it can be done provided you do it sensibly and correctly, and you screen appropriately for whether or not this is even a good goal for that person. Yeah. So that's been a big part of it. And when I look at the clients who've done well for us, again, the Jaces, the Nates, the Lucas, the Luke, the Gav, the Sarah, the Bill, what have each of those ones done? What seems to be common to, like, if I have a recipe, what is the recipe for success as a PT? I'm like, well, they've each done shoots and gotten really lean a few times. That's more important online than I think that it is in person. It's not essential in person. They've come to as many anatomy and training things as they can. They've got through all the various course materials. They've been through RTS a couple of times. They go out of their way to make sure they know everyone in the gyms that they work at and speak to everyone and offer things kind of away. They give a shit about people. I'm like, well, for me, that's pretty much the recipe for success, especially as an in-person PT. It's like, getting in great shape isn't essential, but it still helps. But get really good at the skills. That means you have to go to stuff regularly and want to go out of your way for it. Get through and do that for several years and make sure everyone in the gym knows your face, and make sure you know stuff about them, so you can be like, oh, Ash, yeah, he's got that dog, right? Or he's recently bought a new car for the first time because I saw that on your thing. Like, make sure you know stuff about the people there, and at some point have been like, oh, by the way, we offer free PT sessions if you're interested in trying one at some point, or help with, Ash has got this knee thing kind of going on. You're like, I got a few minutes if you want to see if we can make it feel any better for you. And then you got to be able to deliver on that. But if you can, you're like, that feels better than that ever has. Like, oh, cool. You ever thought about PT before? Like, it doesn't have to be a hard sell.
Yeah.
You just have to know everybody and help them with shit. And if you do that for a lot of people in a gym, you'll be fine. Yeah. It's not a complicated thing. For me, that's the recipe of those people and success for them. And who knows where that leads them over time if they continue to follow that thing of get really good, give a shit about people, put that at the heart of what you do. And to some degree, the money will, I think, take care of itself. I don't know if that answers that question.
It does. And I think the money will take care of itself, but also you just have a much more enjoyable time doing business. I think that's a huge part. And it reminds me of a quote from Phil Knight, the Nike founder, Shoe Dog, where...
The shoe guy. I was thinking of the book and I was like, Shoe Dog is the one I wanted to say.
But he has a line in there. It's a phenomenal book anyway, which I highly recommend to everybody. But the line is, it's never just business. Like, no matter how small a proportion the relationship is, it's always a blend of business and personal, whether you like it or not. And he very much lent into the relationship side of things as well. With all the athletes that he sponsored, he'd always form close bonds with them, which ultimately led to the Jordan line and all that sort of thing. And in the last couple of years, I've really felt this as well, where I've been going back to the UK and doing live workshops. There's people that I might have mentored for years online as well. And you don't get those insights where you hear how well their business is doing, or you hear the results they're getting, they're fully booked, whatever it might be, unless you've had a dedicated Zoom call. So we just did one in June, 2-day one, and that was more than twice as good as the 1-day one because of all the breaks and the meals and the informal chats where all that detail comes out so naturally. So that's a big focus for me going forwards, is how can I engineer more of that as 100%. Deliberately as possible? Yeah,
100%. I think so much of input. So I have a rule for coaches that I call the once a quarter rules. So the once a quarter rules are, once a quarter you need to go on holiday, right? So if someone pays you monthly for something, let's say they pay for a session a week, 2 sessions a week, kind of whatever, that's assuming a 4-week month. So they pay you for 48 weeks of a 52-week year. You get 4 weeks off, right? So bugger off and take holiday. The other one is go to an education event once a quarter. And I think there's several reasons for it. One is the easiest way to kill your passion for something is to turn it into a career, right? This thing you were so excited about becomes a bit of a chore at times. And I don't care what job you do, that's true, right? I'd love to tell you, no, passion keeps everything feeling super, but no, it doesn't, right? But when you learn some more about something you were initially passionate about and care about, that's one of the few things I think that does reignite that love a little bit more. Doesn't last. So, you go to the education event and you leave for about a week. You're excited to use these new things, maybe 2 weeks, and then you settle back down. But you've also then added some more skills to the toolbox. Yeah. And so you can help a few kind of more things now, and you reignited that passion. And then the other big bit is the people that you meet. And I'm not saying you should therefore go just to like network, because that's bullshit, right? Yeah. Like, it's a thing, but I only think it's a thing if you're not someone who goes in for it as the thing to some degree. Like I've had conversations here in Bali with people who just described like going and playing paddle with people, especially in Dubai actually, and like they immediately start trying to sell you on this thing that they're doing. Like, oh, don't be that person, right? But if I go back in my own career to say 2012, 2013, 2014, when I started going to like workshops and things that were put on by Shredded by Science back in the day, and there was Alan Aragon and Brett Contreras and Brad Schoenfeld and co doing these talks and workshops. Some of the guys I met from going to those things, I'm still A, friends with now, and B, have opened various doors for my own career and opportunities to talk at this thing, or I coach that guy now, or whatever else. Because sometimes also the peers that you meet when you're a younger coach in an industry, fast forward 10 years, you'll be further along in the career and often further along in the industry. And your network of people that you know is valuable to you in many different ways. Dan John, again, likes to talk of vertical community and horizontal community. And the idea is your vertical community is your mentors and your mentees, right? So Michael Goulden would be one, Tom Purvis would be one. Below me in my vertical community would be the people I've been naming and mentioning so far. You will have yours. Your horizontal community is, your peers and your mates and stuff. And the hard part about being a PT to some degree is most of your horizontal community won't inspire you to want to be a better coach or will show you much of a way. I actually, after we saw each other a month or so ago, started writing a post on like, how many PTs have I worked with? And I don't mean like mentored, I mean like worked alongside in various gyms. And how many of them would I be happy to have the career of? And I came up with you and James Cooper.
Yeah.
I was like, I think that. Now, there might be a couple of others, and maybe I'm not thinking about, and maybe I just don't know for some of them or what. But I reckon I've worked with something like 100 to 150 other trainers at the leisure centre I started with, the 6 years at David Lloyd, the year at Gymbox, and the private studio. I think it's somewhere in that region. And almost every one of those people was lovely, right? They're all, PTs generally are nice people, friendly people, etc. I can count maybe a couple of dickheads, right?
Yeah. It's a few.
But most of them didn't inspire me to be a better PT particularly, or show me the way, right? Or like help with skills and my kind of development and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's true in most gyms, to be honest with you. You have to go out of your way as a trainer, because the standard is a bit crap, to find your horizontal community, your sort of tribe, as it were, of like-minded coaches who give a shit, want to be good at what they do, are ambitious, or all those things. Yeah. You have to go out your way to find them and to find your mentors along the way. But you find them all by going to stuff once a quarter, generally, and finding, these are the good ones. I'm going to go regularly to that stuff. Yeah. And then once you find them, it's great. And then even from the person running its perspective, it just helps everything. Half of it is the hangout as well. It's the meal and the drinks and stuff that you do. It's not just the workshop. It's the getting to know people a little bit more and hearing a bit more of their backstory sometimes. And other times it is the stuff in the workshop where they've got this issue going on. Well, you can't assess properly online. You can't. You're missing some of it. Like, I can assess ranges of motion a little bit. I can check their kind of positions on things. I can ask them to show me stuff. But how am I going to assess force output of a particular position? So I don't know whether there's even the opportunity to develop this beyond what it is, or whether that's just what they've got. I don't know I know they can't get to this, or they can get to this, but it's weak as fuck and it doesn't seem to sit there. But why doesn't it? Which part of this, around this joint equation, is to blame? And whether that's even solvable, I don't know. We can explore it, but that takes bloody ages online. Whereas in person, we can do that together reasonably quickly. Like, show me, right, and move stuff around and try this and try that. Oh, yeah, I feel better. What about if we do? Like, so online will always be lacking a version of in-person assessment. Yeah. So if you can get in person with people, great, it adds an extra layer. And if you're good enough to be able to work with those issues and solve them, guess what? You just became more authoritative in your client's eyes. And that is always a positive thing for them staying with you for longer and you being able to help them. So yeah, I just always think it's hang out as much as you can, do those things. It will benefit you, your clients, and everything in between. Yeah.
I love that analogy of the vertical and horizontal communities. It's a nice framework to make a lot of things make sense. And it also just means you can be a lot more intentional with how you seek it out. Because there's something I always joke about here, in that I've met and made a lot of friends in the sauna at Nirvana.
Sounds questionable, but sure.
In Vauxhall, no. But
that's a niche.
But basically, Nirvana it does have some influencers go there, but it has rules on tripods and professional cameras. So it's actually a lot more low key compared to the other sexy gyms in Bali. And by virtue of choosing Nirvana and being in the sauna, you already have a lot of common ground with people, in that you're into fitness. You've deliberately turned your back on the more showy gyms, and you care about saunaing and recovering and stuff. So you just strike up a conversation and you get on with these people very well. And I think in-person workshops are another great filter, in that if somebody is interested in whatever the niche that you're into is, whether it's movement mechanics or whatever, by virtue of you traveling there, spending money on it and the time, taking time off work or spending your weekend doing it, you know you're going to have a lot of things in common and you're going to have a lot of shared values. And it's beautiful to see so many people connect very quickly to quite a deep level because like, you get it. We're in the same boat.
These are my people.
Exactly. In my gym, I feel on my own, or in my clinic, I feel like I'm on my own, but we all see things similarly. And then, you hear stories of them working together or catching up and becoming friends. It's awesome.
I mean, one of the reasons the ski trip thing started was because most of these guys, I'm fortunate that people who come down to these workshops go repeatedly. Like most of them come to every single one unless they're on a holiday or something and can't make that particular one work. But as a result, some of them, they've known each other for years now and they are mates and they hang out outside of when we're putting on workshops, especially if they live near each other. And that's a nice thing to kind of see as well, just to get to play a bit of a role in even that side of the development for someone is rewarding and it's great. And it's, you just don't find these people in your gym for the most part, unless you're fortunate enough to work in, if you start out in a UP, that might be a little bit different at times, although I'd be interested to see what it's like now since it was taken over kind of thing. I've heard it's still okay, but I don't know that if it's still quite what it was. But, we'll see how that plays out. But at least you have a system there that is mentoring you and you have to check in with people and there's some guidance. And, I often think our industry would be better with like an apprenticeship type model.
For sure.
Because you are just left to your own devices. And so, I always use the same quote. And it's hard to verify how correct this is, but like the industry average of how long someone lasts as a PT from when they start to when they quit being something like 18 months to less than 2 years. And that's skewed by you, who's been doing it for how long have you been doing it now?
Nearly 11 years now.
Yeah, right. And like 16, and Jimbo's been nearly 20. And there's just, you'll be in the same boat with me. How many coaches do you know over the years that you've worked with who are not coaching kind of now? Or there'll be loads.
Yeah. Well, we worked at Gymbox. Yeah. Like even in a year at Gymbox, you probably would have seen 20 people do that.
Yeah, 100%. And it's in part because the qualification sucks. So you aren't trained to really know how to help people or build a business or anything. And then it's because you're just left to your own devices and trying to figure it out. Be like, I guess people will pay me £60 an hour straight away. But it's like, yeah, maybe. All right. You need help. You need guidance. We need mentors. We need like an apprenticeship kind of thing. But most places don't have it. And so you're left with the unfortunate reality that you have to go out and find that yourself as a PT. It doesn't matter whether it's me or Ash or whatever. You've got to find some people that you trust that are ahead of you, that have made it work, that you can learn from, that you still go, that resonates. I feel like that's not bollocks.
Yeah.
Like that's where I want to be and that's what I want to kind of emulate. You're like, go work with those people.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. I think that's the future of education in many industries, is that because traditional education is so slow to update, like if you do strength and conditioning at university, that syllabus is so out of date and the process for it updating is so slow, you're always going to be behind the actual industry and the cutting edge of what's going on in real life. So I see it only becoming more like it is now, more fragmented in that you go direct to source for, okay, this person's really good at this subject. I'm just going to learn only what I want to learn. I'm not going to take on all the extra fluff that goes around it in a 3-year university course. So I can become very accomplished in the specific areas that I want to be accomplished in, rather than like I've had several people who've done physio, osteo and chiro, and I use a small percentage of what I learned on a day-to-day basis. There's so much fluff and filler in there that I don't care about, and I've got more from doing 6 months with you than I did in 3 years, because all of it's applicable and you only focus on the things that I want to learn. And I think that's the way it's going to go everywhere.
Yeah, I remember again when we were probably coming up and starting out, S&C was the thing, right? And I ended up, so that's what you apply with. Everyone is, you're doing some version of an Olympic lift. The power lifts are everywhere. This is what we're doing. And I came to realize that at least, now this obviously depends who you work with, but as someone who worked with what I would just call Gen Pop people at a leisure center, 6 years in the David Lloyd, blah, blah, blah. Most people don't need S&C. Right? Most of the stuff that you were worrying about or trying to optimize for or periodize, it's like, this is an accountant who's 52, right? They go on holidays, things come up. They don't really need to periodize anything, right? They're not consistent enough with stuff for us to really need to be worrying about that. B, I'm crowbarring them into movements that don't suit them a lot of the time. Why am I using the functional movement screen's overhead squat assessment for this person who sits like a question mark all day and is 53 and doesn't have this extension to even get into that shape at all? I usually facetiously use Jess's nan, my partner's nan these days, as an example of like, what would you do to get her to overhead squat? Because she's like 83. She can't use the hob in the kitchen anymore because her head is like touches the hob when she stands up, right? But she sleeps in the chair. That's how she lips. This is her position. Her overhead is that.
Yeah.
Right? You go, none of what you think you can use is going to be appropriate for her as a client.
1 out of 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Now what?
Yeah, exactly. And you just go, now I'm not suggesting all clients are, that extreme. They're not. But they're usually nothing like 20-year-old athletes either. And I crowbarred way too many people into stuff that suited some of them and did not suit a whole bunch of them, because I was just like, well, that's what you have to do. This is the stuff. Of course everyone squats, benches, and deadlifts. Of course we have to use barbells. And it's like, oh no, it's just, I see the biomechanics as just, or at least exercise mechanics and stuff, as just forces applied to anatomy. That's what we're playing with. So I need to understand anatomy very well, and I need to understand forces very well. And, these are just symmetrical rocks. There's nothing special about this symmetrical rock shape particularly versus this other type versus this cable one versus this other force that's pushing on my hand in a particular way or at this point. And what challenge does it create to this joint and whatever else happens to be going on within it? Anatomically, am I making a bunch of assumptions about what my client can even do and get into? If anyone hasn't looked at it, just Google Paul Grilly Bones. Paul Grilly Bones he's a yoga guy, but he's got a great page of just bones of different cadavers. And you can see the structural variance within some of these. So if you look at some of the lumbar spines and we look at the spinous processes that stick out the back, and you just look at the gaps between this one set of lumbar spines and the gaps on this other one, where there is no gap. So you go, well, which one of these two people has more extension available? This guy, what would you do to get more extension from this spinous process that's touching the other spinous process already? Like none, short of a bone saw, right?
Yeah,
you're not doing anything with that. You see things, torsions in the tibia or the humerus. So what presents as, the palm's facing this way, so that must be internal rotation of the shoulder, right? Well, maybe that's one possibility. But what if I've also got a torsion such that, the pit of the elbow, as it were, faces inward a lot more for this person, even in the same glenohumeral position? Am I making presumptions that things have to look the same side to side? Have I checked that my client even has that position available as a joint position before I even start loading it and putting it into an exercise? Because you'll be amazed how many things get better when you just stop crowbarring people into shapes that you go, oh yeah, they don't have that. Oh, we'll just do a different thing where they can get into this particular shape. For me, I don't even remember how I got onto this topic now, but that was a big part of S&C and just that stuff, right? Of going, half of this doesn't matter. I mean, I read research for years because I went through a phase from about 2014 to about 2019, something like that, where, I've been going to Aragon, Schoenfeld, Helms seminars and all this stuff, and PubMed was where I was at. And so I was like, and read way too much stuff that did not make any difference to my clients, if I'm honest, right? And then as I started to get into exercise mechanics, and I met Michael, and I then got to see the way some of the research was done. So bless them, there's a good paper, bless them is a bit patronizing, I probably shouldn't say that, right? But there's a paper called Without Fail that's open source that you can see online that's run by Milo Wolf, Dr. Pack, Schoenfeld's an author on it, etc. And it's comparing two groups, right? One take everything to failure, the other group keep 2 reps in reserve. That's what it purports to study. But the great thing they did, they've included the training footage. So you can see the exercise execution across the people, which I love because, everything else just says they did 3 sets of bench press, then they did 3 sets of this, right? And you just have to take that as like, I know what they did and how they performed it in that case. And you assume so much. You watch this thing, man. So we've got a Smith squat for 2 different guys. One's pretty good. One is nice, smooth, and controlled. He's got 140 on there or whatever he's kind of dealing with. Each rep is consistent. If you were drawing lines of force up through it, he's much more hip dominant kind of with it. Still a challenge to the knee. Fine. I'd be perfectly happy with my client squatting the way this one dude's doing. The other dude is slut dropping sideways.
Oh, man.
Like, yeah. Each rep is different to the other. His proportions mean he isn't doing the same thing as the other guy kind of anyway, right? I'm a long gangly person who does not squat well by nature, but because he's on the Smith squat and he's able to get his feet out in front of him a little bit more, it's almost a bit like a hack squat that he's kind of doing, which is fine. But he's got a much bigger moment to the knee for his quad within all this stuff. It's supposed to be, I think, down 3 seconds, but the one guy is, the other guy is not. The other dude's just going, yeah, go for it. Both of them take it to basically the same level of fatigue, right? I can't even tell you which one off the top of my head was actually supposed to be the failure group. But they ain't doing the same exercise. I know we've written that they're doing the same exercise, but they're not. And you'll see the same thing when they're doing their push downs in various kind of ways and all this stuff. And you just go, oh, I don't care now what that study found. Because science, when done well, is supposed to control for all variables but one. We mix that variable up. And we test the outcome difference from that change in variable, which is great. The scientific method is wonderful. But we think we're doing much more scientific things in the exercise research world than we actually are, mainly because most of the research doesn't understand the variables well enough, which is a depressing place to be. Yeah. And I can say that because Brad Schoenfeld taught me to squat, and it was not very effective. It was a bit crap. He just told me I had long legs, effectively, and I was like, oh, fuck. That does not mean we dismiss everything that they say and all the rest of it. Of course it doesn't mean that. And again, it doesn't mean they're bad people. They're wonderfully bright, smart people. But our industry... I remember standing in front of Michael when he was first going, why is a lat raise hardest out here versus here? And I'd been a trainer for like 8 years at this point, and I was like, fuck, I don't know, right? I was like, well, it's not like the dumbbell is heavier. 5 kilos is 5 kilos. That's not going to have changed. So like, what the fuck am I missing? And I'd spent all this time reading research and everything, and I hadn't really come across leverage and torque and what a moment is and physics. And I was like, well, this is a fucking failure, right? And then you go, well, even if I start understanding that part, I still then have to put in what are the structural potential differences person to person, and maybe what's their training and an injury history. Like I broke this collarbone playing rugby, but this shoulder gives me way more shit. And if you listen quietly, it's a bit in places. And I get low back problems from all kinds of things these days, right? But I spent years, long gangly people generally don't suit the power lifts, but I had to power lift. Of course I have to bench press. Of course I have the back squat. And so there's probably some wear and tear on that. It could be worse, but some bits could be better. And there's differences in how I have to perform stuff on this side versus this side to make it feel okay and to make it feel tolerable and loadable. I had no appreciation of any of that. And I remember going to, do you know the hip physio?
Heard of,
Mehmet Jam. So I went to the hip physio's 2-day like London hip workshop. And I like, Mehmet's a good communicator, super lovely dude. And it starts with, an anatomy quiz. And so I'm the only PT there amongst physios, a couple of doctors, osteo or two, something like that. And I won the anatomy quiz. And I was like, good for me, right? And I was proud. I got my box of celebrations. Great. But I quickly realized that didn't mean as much to me as I thought that it did as the weekend went on, because I was like, oh, the standard actually just isn't, it's not that good. What they know about, and they don't know anything about resistance or exercises particularly. And their anatomy was still also lacking, I would say, because they've learned some basic anatomy, but they don't understand how it changes with position. So glute medius and minimus becoming much more of an internal rotator of the hip in hip flexion, not so much of an abductor. And you can see that if you move stuff around. And I've done it with cadavers myself, just to kind of demo it. But these are the people who go out of their way to be the good ones. Yeah. They're the ones paying to come to a course. And Mehmet's presenting data and research. But, he said at one point, I don't like cables for hip flexor work because cables are too heavy. Yeah. Which is not a sentence, right? I'm like, I don't know what you mean on that. Right. What if I put like 0.5 kilo on it? How is that? But he liked like a fitball plank, which is fine. But if I drew a force coming up from your toes and the amount of weight in that force, and I drew the moment it creates across to your hip joint, and therefore the amount of hip flexor torque that I'm being generated from this force up and these ones at your hands, elbows, wherever you happen to kind of be, and the size of the forces and torques that are trying to bend that hip like this, it's big, right? It's a big amount.
Yeah.
If I did the same thing with you laying down and me attaching a cable to your thigh or your foot or something, and I put a really small amount of force, and I put the size of the torque being created to the hip, it's objectively a smaller number by quite some distance to this other thing.
Yeah.
Now, that's not up for debate. That's a physics thing. That's just a reality of this bit. Now, whether or not the Fitball plank feels good and is helpful for people's hip flexors is slightly irrelevant. It's fine. If you found it to be useful, carry on, be my guest. I don't want to dismiss that and take it away, but I want to go, hang on, what's our reasoning here?
Exactly, the justification.
Because you like bands, but you don't like, something's missing in this. This isn't right. And so, I mean, it's physio stuff. So everything is treated with bands around the knees and clams and, and the usuals. Everything is an immediate jump from 2 feet to 1 foot, which is a giant change in, if I'm 60 kilos, I've got 30, let's just say, if it's evenly spread. Now I have 60, so I've just doubled the challenge just in that. But I've also got a big frontal plane challenge and stuff now that just doesn't exist in this particular setup that is huge. So if you've got a Trendelenburg-y type thing kicking out, you're like, well, they can't. So I can't just get them straight onto that leg. That's too far. Could I get like 2 scales that they can stand on and go, well, how much weight is in each?
Yeah.
All right, it's 60-40 right now. It's like, can you just slightly shift a little bit? And we're just going to pay attention to where you can hold that shape, and then we'll come back. And, I've worked with a bunch of people with hip replacements where we'll do just like that, which is just a really subtle, but it gets this idea of where does theirs, there. Because if they can't stand on one leg, I can't just keep asking them to stand on one leg. It's like, I can't squat 100 kilos. Here's 100 kilos. I can't squat 100 kilos. Here's 100. It's like, no, meet them what they can do, and then we nudge. And there's just not an appreciation for these things. And again, that makes it sound like you're wanting to be a dick to people and go, and it's not that they're bad people. Mehmet Cem was a really good communicator. I loved how he communicated. I loved a lot of what he was saying through it. But then there's bits where you're like, hang on, our industry is failing if you think that.
Yeah.
Because that's not right. That can't be right. And we need to do something about it. And so I realized research was just way less helpful and useful than I wished it was.
Completely agree. I studied a science degree at uni, and I think one of the biggest takeaways was understanding the scientific method and knowing how poorly it's applied, especially in fitness and nutrition as well.
Yep.
But one of the things I take issue with, and I think probably one of the reasons why I dismissed Mehmet, if that's his name, I don't like it when somebody specializes in a body part. It's like,
sure.
If you're a hip physio, you're basically trying to position yourself as solving hip issues.
Yeah.
Hip issues
might not be about the hip.
Exactly right. They're not necessarily about the hip. All the body parts are hopefully all connected together.
Sure.
So they all matter to each other. So as soon as you start teaching rehab as hip focused, you're immediately disregarding a lot of useful
I think
stuff.
in fairness to him, that's a marketing move rather than how he actually communicates about things. Okay. Because I mean, this was 2 years ago that I did that with him. So it'd be interesting to see. And obviously, look, if you're going for a hip workshop, you're going to start at the hip and then work out a little bit kind of from there. But that said, I don't remember there being a giant discussion of, say, the foot, which would be a great thing to be also discussing for the hip. But that could be me misremembering it because there's a couple. So I'm pretty sure he does talk about and appreciate some more of those things as well.
Yeah.
But then you find other people who, I remember doing, David Gray?
Yeah.
So his workshop was great.
Yeah, very good.
And one of the things that really stood out for me was just, they're all great coaches. The way they coach exercises and get detailed and specific and stuff, I was like, even if he might explain it in a slightly different way to maybe the way I think about it in some sense, you're ultimately still dealing with a very similar kind of thing. And I think we'd agree actually on a lot of what's happening. But the most important part is like, but when we put it with this client, here's how we progress it, regress it. Here's the detail we go into for helping. This client's got this issue, so actually we're going to modify this. Because I was like, this is great. This is people who actually work with people a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, great. Yeah, I'll come back to more of your stuff because there's definitely things I'm going to nick and steal from all of this. And that's a useful thing to add into the toolbox. So there are great people out there as well. And I think a lot of it is trying to some degree, nick bits. Which you're going, that's a good idea. That resonates. Yeah, I'm definitely going to take that idea.
Yeah.
Some of it you come up with occasionally by yourself. I came up with the scales idea.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Which I was like, that's a great idea. I was very happy with myself for this realization. But we've all done that with loads of I use so many of Dan John's things. I use so many of Tom's things and Michael's things and whatever. And for me, you just try and credit wherever you get it from. And I like giving credit for those bits. But we're all a bit of a hodgepodge of the people we've learned from.
For sure. And I think that's ultimately how the industry edge moves forwards, is that you stand on the shoulders of giants, you iterate and test and play with stuff, which is another reason why the scientific literature is often so poor, because they're trying to ask such a specific question in a specific way. They don't control for variables, and they're littered with assumptions, just like which exercise is better for growing a muscle, and they're doing the electromagnetic readings. Like, that's is a huge assumption.
Exactly. That this correlates.
And I think it's what do they call it? Maximum voluntary contraction is like the yardstick. So that's literally for glutes is stand and clench. Stand and clench, by that logic, is the best way to grow your glutes because it's 100%.
This is the thing that has always baffled me on those things. How can you have more than 100% of maximum contraction? I get it's voluntary. And you can say there's an involuntary contraction, a voluntary kind of thing. And you can electrically stimulate and see how much force this fucker can really produce under maximal stimulation. And great. But it just ends up being weird with that stuff. Oh, this is 120% of I was like, that doesn't make any sense. You see it a lot in, again, going back to their hip stuff. A lot of stuff is like, well, this is 120% of max contraction. So the long lever Copenhagen is better than this particular one. Blah, blah. You're like, well, yeah, but that's going to involve a lot more medial knee challenge as well to it. That is not that comfortable for a lot of people. I've also got to prop this arm against something. That's not that comfortable for a lot of kind of people. Of course, the long lever Copenhagen gives you more output than the short lever. It's a leverage. You go, well, you're not really comparing the right things per se within some of this stuff, because it'll also say like deadlift 100 with what load? What do you mean deadlift? As though that's a set amount. With a set,
and again, assuming everyone deadlifts the same. Somebody's super hip dominant, somebody might be really back dominant, and you're like, well,
it just doesn't make. I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me, and yet it's put in this scientific looking table, and so people then use the table to inform what they do rather than understanding the principles behind it.
Exactly.
And you go, no. No.
And they talk about it like fact. That's the most frustrating thing. It's like, this study showed that this is how it works. Like, no. That's not what comes out of that study.
I've done, so, do you know Chris Beardsley?
No.
So Chris was a university lecturer, just like unbelievably smart guy. And like, he's a fucking encyclopedia for physiology type knowledge, right? I've done his private mentorship twice. Super smart guy. Great for brushing up on your physiology. I think he goes a bit far with his mechanicsy stuff, because he likes to take this idea of neuromechanical matching, which is an idea that a muscle that has the most favorable mechanical advantage in a particular position will be preferentially recruited, which has some thing to it. Like if I have this guy who's got a giant internal moment and this guy with a pathetic internal moment, well, I'll get more out of the guy with the big moment because it creates more torque per unit of force. So it would, from an evolutionary perspective, make some sense to use that guy and be more energy efficient. Fine. So there's a principle in here that I think is a sensible one for us to start using. But it's taken off of research off of 3 cadavers. And now I've done 8 days of cadaveric work where I've got to cut in kind of myself and weird, I didn't think they'd give me the scalpel and let me just do what I wanted, but that's basically what I've got to do for 8 different days, 7 different cadavers, 8 different cadavers. And so I've seen a bunch of different bodies.
Yeah.
They're all over the age of 70, basically. And so if you think a 70-year-old is going to be reflective of Ash right now, Ash should be very disappointed with that particular outcome, right? So I don't know that us taking markers from an old person who's kind of a bit atrophied, and pretty much they just put like cables between 2 things, right? And goes from here, it goes to here, which is like, I use balloons on skeletons a lot to show and teach things. They're great. But, pretty much that goes here to here. But, yours might come up like this and go round. So that's a different line of pull than if it went straight this way.
Yeah.
I've seen... So you learn that the rear delts go onto the spine of the scapula. I've seen a guy whose rear delt did not go onto the spine of the scapula. It was just in that infraspinous fossa kind of thing. I've seen dudes with... You might learn that your sciatic nerve splits in 2 about a third of the way up the back of your leg. I saw a guy where it didn't split till after his knee. You see ones where they're missing palmaris longus. You see ones where this attaches in a different spot. You see variants. You put that with the Paul Grilly stuff and you go, okay, I've got a variety. And you only have to have also trained a bunch of people to go, well, that person has different muscular shape and size than that person over here. Sadly, I have really long calf insertions and they can fuck off, right? I don't therefore want to say that these 3 cadavers are useless information.
No.
But if you want to take these and say, because of this, therefore, this is the exercise that is always the best within that. I'm like, whoa. Yeah. There's more variance amongst cadavers than you might think within that. You need to do some more and I can understand that. Secondly, you might also want to account for motion in other planes, potentially, or in other kind of joints. Like if you were, because there's some looking at, elbow flexory stuff. So if we look at a brachioradialis, which has a big moment to the elbows, he's a big elbow flexor. But he's a radio-ulnar supinator in some positions and pronator in others. You can kind of see mine sitting kind of there as he comes along. Well, to put that on top of my elbow axis, I'm actually slightly angled that way. I'm not fully in a hammer grip. When I'm hammered, it starts coming across me a little bit more. But, if you took what was being said in some of those, it's like, no, it has to be in this position. Like, well, mine would be that position. Yeah. And you can see it. Yeah. So are you just taking that thing because the study told you, oh, yeah, no, rope hammer curl is going to be best for, like, okay, maybe, but like we've got more detail and nuance within this. And because pretty much everything is always using bench press and stuff in the study literature, what do I do with the exercises that don't involve a barbell, right? Or what it's like, let's start with the principles and the physics and the anatomy, and we can make some sensible kind of things from there. And if we get better at doing that, then the quality of the research will go up. Yeah. And eventually we'll get stuff that's better for us to analyze. But at the moment, most of it is just crap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many, even just individual exercise execution varies so much. And if I've interpreted what he's saying correctly there, he's basically saying that most people gravitate towards theoretically optimal mechanics, which just absolutely isn't true.
It's not even clear. Just go in the gym more.
Exactly. Just go and look at some people.
Just go watch some people.
Go watch the people walk. Literally in walking, people don't do that. So
you need to go out on the gym floor. That's one of the things I think you can tell though sometimes is people when they're like, have you been a PT? Yeah. A lot of the research is done by people who've never actually been a trainer. So they're still within the university world and they're pretty much training them and their mates. And I'm like, yeah. No, get out. Go to your local Pure Gym, go to the leisure center, go to a bunch of different places. Just watch for a while if you want. Exactly. See how differently everything is executed.
Just put a camera over the bench press and see what the different bench presses do on a given day.
It's going to be wild. So I think we're seeing more of that stuff being spoken about. It ends up often turning into like a bit of a dick measuring contest of like, who knows more and I'm right. And it's like, I'm not sure that that's helpful. Yeah. And I try to have these conversations in more respectful, reasonable manners of going, look, until I see you do it as well, I don't know. Just because you told me you did an exercise, that means almost nothing to me, right? I'm like, that's words. You show me what that means to you and we can then maybe have a bit more of a conversation about what I think might be happening or what we could explore. But just because exercise X over here says this, that doesn't really tell me at all how you're performing it. Yeah. Not really.
Yeah. I think that's it. And well, this is the big argument almost for bro science as well, in that that's the real lab, in that people are out there applying new different things. And sure, it's anecdotal, but all scientific theories are anecdotal to start with. So yeah, there's so many examples across the fitness industry of where something was just done by these weird people over here and then suddenly became adopted because it got great results. And you're like, we don't fully know why, but there's something in it. So we're just going to keep hammering it.
Yeah. And I think, well, even within science, I can't remember who I saw talk about this. Someone was talking about the difference between maybe evidence-based lifting versus science-based lifting. Okay. And I kind of like their idea. Evidence is what the data says. Yeah. Science includes the realm of physics. I don't need a study to tell me what has a greater mechanical advantage here or if I load it here, right? I go, no, that's a moment arm issue. That's a physics issue. That's so established as I don't need research for that. So the torque that's being created for this joint, of course it's smaller here than it is there. You need a study for that? You don't need a study for that. That's what that is. So if you understand some of those bits and you go, okay, well, this joint moves around, let's say my elbow, and let's say it's just the elbow. So forget radio ulnar for a bit. And you go, well, it only moves in 1 degree of freedom. It's a sagittal guy. It does flexion extension. But if I'm super jacked, right, and I sit down to do curls and I can't get my elbows down more than this, and I use dumbbells, well, my elbow goes this way right now with a resistance that goes this way.
Yeah.
And I'm really not aligning that very well with what the elbow wants to do. So that might be stupid for that particular guy. So he might need to do the classic bodybuilder move.
Yeah.
Of this and this to do it. Whereas someone else who can get comfortably tucked in here is like, well, this is fine for me. We might use cable. Like, you can just use some sensible. I think one of the things that tricep stuff often shows is there's things being like underhand grip does more of this. And I'm like, maybe. But is it also just that to do a pronated grip, watch my elbows, right? If I'm here doing an elbow extension, but I can't get flat on that barbell without, or this handle, without doing that. Well, now my elbow is facing this way. And again, it wants to do that with a resistance that's in a different plane to it. And I'm like, whereas when I underhand tuck it, I can kind of stay in that plane. So yeah, maybe there is some different activation, but it might not be for the reason that you think. Yeah. Like if I just figured out how do I put the plane of the cable through that the whole way, and that might be a bit nicer on my joint, because no one starts like, doing curls. I'll come up here and do a dumbbell curl. That would be a stupid way of doing it. Or on a leg extension, I'll go completely 90 degrees to the thing. You wouldn't do it. So you're like, put the resistance in the plane that joint moves through might be a sensible place to start. I don't know that I need research for some of those things. I just need to have some sensible ideas about resistance, human movement, what joints do and where they want to move, and go, what's my client showing me they've got? All right, how do I line that up? And we'll start from there. So yeah, I think the research just has a long way to go before, frankly, it means anything to me anymore.
Yeah, that's a really nice distinction, because that's something I've thought without being able to articulate it well. I have a knee-jerk reluctance to call anything, to talk about things as evidence-based, because you are just limiting the things that you can assume to be true.
And there's so many assumptions in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You go, and I've seen the video. I don't trust any of the ones that I thought this told me. I thought this was useful. I was just like, oh, that had a researcher stood next to the guy working out being like, come on, dude. And I'm like, and it's been signed off by Schoenfeld's an author on that paper, and Milo Wolf and Pat. Like, these are big names in our industry for the research world. And you go, now I love that they shared it, because that's how we start to do something about it and to start to solve it. But man, it does mean on one level, I don't know that I want to trust it. And even if it did, even if it would have been done really, really well, half of it still doesn't matter to your client.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all of the variables that make up Sue, who's sitting in front of you right now, you ain't going to find a study with all of the variables with her. It doesn't exist. It won't even be close. All the preferences, likes and dislikes, fears of the gym stuff she can do, training history, if there is any, or whatever little niggles and injuries and stuff she's got. You're like, there's so many things that make her a bit unique.
Yeah.
And your job, because you're a trainer, not a researcher, is to get her a result, whatever that means to her. Comfortable in the gym, moving better, feeling better, stronger, a bit leaner, etc.
Yeah.
That's the only bit that matters to her. So whether or not the research told you, yes, but I should do this, fuck off. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is, did you help Sue? If you did, then what you did was right.
Yeah.
If what you did didn't help Sue, yeah, but the research said this was the correct amount of sets and reps and stuff. I'm like, fuck off. That's the wrong way of approaching this job. You're not a researcher. You are a trainer. It's a different gig.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. That was incredibly insightful. We'll have to do a part 2.
Sounds
probably
good.
Online. But where can people find out more about you?
Instagram's probably the easiest place. So search Paul Standell, Standell. Find me on there. There is YouTube coming as well very shortly, which will be under the same name. But yeah, that's the easiest place. Got any questions or any of that resonated, drop us a DM, send us a message. Happy to have a chat.
Awesome.